Ooh, I have a lot to talk about. Hi, I'm Chanel. I am a knitter, spinner, and designer and recent college grad living in New Jersey. This is episode 31 of the Pipernell podcast, and Pipernell is the little alias that I've made up for myself on the internet. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. Please be mindful of that. And let's see, what else? On the social media, you can find me as Pipernell basically everywhere. Instagram, Ravelry. Please feel free to send me a message, friend me, follow, whatever it is on any of those outlets, and get in touch with me there. On Ravelry, I have a Ravelry group for this podcast, the Pipernell podcast. That's where I put show notes, which I take fairly detailed show notes of, including, and I try to get all of the details of what yarns I use, patterns, project links if those are applicable. And if you have any questions, that's a great place to ask me any questions and just get in touch with other people that are cool. And so, yeah, I have a lot to talk about this episode. Let's see, it's been a month, more than a month since my last episode, and I was on a brief hiatus because I went on a trip to visit family in Taiwan, and then immediately after that, it was Rhinebeck. So, yeah, lots has happened. So, overview of what I have for you today. I'm going to talk about what I was doing a little bit before I left for Taiwan, so all the knitting I got done there, what I was up to in Taiwan knitting and non-knitting related, then Rhinebeck, and then the leftovers after all of that happened, and I've just been trying to settle into life back. Also, I forgot to close my door, so I'm going to be right back. I don't know, I just don't like having that door open while I podcast. So, knitting before Taiwan, pre-Taiwan. The first thing that I have to show you is an FO, and this FO has accumulated stories beyond just me knitting on it for my trip. I started it a while ago. Also, by the way, it is raining. It is a really, really nice day to be podcasting on Sunday, October 29th. And I love listening to the rain. But anyway, I was talking about this FO, which is actually hanging on the back of my chair. It is a project that I've been calling the Mask Cardi. It's also been my Rhinebeck sweater. It is also the Migration Cardigan by Stacy Gerbman. So, right as I left, so I was gone for a total of a month. The first week of that month I spent in Vegas with my parents, and I was mostly hanging around their house in my old room, and also I helped out with moving in both of my brothers to college. So they both go to University of California, Santa Cruz. So from Vegas, that's about a 10-hour road trip. So I had a lot of knitting time. I drove for part of it. It was nice on the way up because we had 5 licensed drivers. So we could split that time pretty nicely. But it still gave me about 8 hours of knitting time. So I was working on a sweater. Let me put it on as I talk about it. And ignore the... Oh, good. I have the camera angled, so it's not, so you don't see the complete mess behind me in my room. But this is the finished sweater. It's called the Mask Cardi because it's part of a series of 2 cardigans I wanted to do to contrast kind of feminine and masculine aesthetics in my style. And this is representing the more masculine style, the masculine side of my fairly androgynous style. So this, again, the pattern is Migration by Stacy Gerbman. It is a cabled bottom-up cardigan. It is knit in pieces, so you knit the body in one piece and then the sleeves in 2 more pieces. After you piece it, then you pick up stitches around the neckline for the button band in that. That was my first time knitting a button band like that, and it was really fun. The yarn that I used is Bartlett Yarns 2-ply in their sandstone colorway, though I was checking out the Bartlett Yarns website and I can't find this colorway anymore. So I don't know if it's available anymore. They have similar reddish brown colors, but if you see, it's a very tweedy looking yarn, kind of rustic. It is not the softest yarn, which makes it great for outerwear. It's nice and hardy, and I really like it. I'm not that sensitive to scratchy wool, so I feel like it's a sweater that's going to last me forever. The needles that I used, this is about an Aran weight yarn, and I used a US 5 or 3.75 millimeter needle for the ribbing, which was the bottom hem ribbing and the hems of the sleeves, and then the button band. And for the main cabled body, I used a US 7 or 4.5 millimeters, and both of those were Chaogu knit metal needles. So some of the techniques that I want to mention about this sweater is that, and that were new to me, is that I used a new bind off to me on places like the shoulders and the caps of the sleeves, which is called the sloped bind off. The pattern has detailed instructions on all of these techniques, which is great. So the sloped bind off, I kind of had reverse engineered it before I looked at the instructions, because I knew that the slope bind off is used when you're binding off for a sloped edge on your knitting. So places like shoulders where the piece kind of curves up, and sleeve caps, and you want to avoid that jog between rows of your binding off. So you bind off, say, like four stitches on one row and then 4 stitches when you come back around on the next row. But you don't want that jog between between the 2 clusters of 4 stitches. So you do some strategic stitch slipping, and that eliminates the step. And also it makes seaming nicer. So that was my first time using the sloped bind off. I really like the effect that it has, and I will be keeping that in my toolkit for future sweater knitting. I also set in sleeves for the first time. The pattern did not have instructions for setting in sleeves, but I was able to look up some tutorials. I will be linking tutorials in the show notes. I forget which ones that I used. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But they were tutorials on sweater construction. And what I did was First, I did the shoulder seams, because when you knit it bottom up, the shoulders came in 2 pieces. So I seamed the shoulders, and then I turned the piece inside out, turned the sleeve inside out, and first pinned the sleeve all around the armhole, and to make sure I got the spacing right. First, I lined up the tops and the bottoms so that the sleeve wasn't rotated in a weird way. And then I took the yarn that I used, Bartlett Yarns, and seamed the sleeve. I think I might have to go back and seam it a second time, just because some of the stitches turn out kind of spaced out. So in some spaces I can almost stick my finger in between the stitches, because it's just a thicker yarn. I mean, it's held up just fine. The pattern actually recommends taking a fingering weight sock yarn in a similar color and seaming with that. I was fine using the yarn that I used for the rest of the sweater, because the pattern actually calls for Brooklyn tweed. Was it loft? Not loft, shelter. And that is a woolen spun yarn that is low twist. So if you use that for seaming, it's probably going to pull apart. This yarn does not pull apart like that, so I was totally fine using it for seaming. And after I set in the sleeves, then it was time to pick up stitches for the shawl collar. This is my first time doing a shawl collar, and I really liked doing it. It was really fun to knit because you're knitting back and forth across all the stitches and doing some short rows. And so it was the ribbing plus a little bit of shaping, which gave it interest. And the short row method that Stacy chose, and I need to ask her why, but it was a new to me technique too, a yarn over short row, that I think part of it is that it doesn't show up in a ribbed pattern. So you don't see the yarn over, you don't see the short row turns in this collar at all. And maybe it's easier to do with thicker yarn, I'm not sure. But yeah, also going to add that short row method to my toolkit. And I really just like the result of the shawl collar. Excuse me, I think I have some allergies today. And it's just super warm and snuggly. That brings me to the fit of the rest of this cardigan. It turned out exactly as I wanted. I wanted a more boxy, kind of masculine looking unisex cardigan that I could throw on over any outfit and add this kind of like scholarly look to it. So it has some positive ease around the torso. I mean, I don't have a very big bust, and I chose the smallest size. So this it fits with the amount of ease that I wanted. I didn't block it very hard when I was blocking it, so it didn't grow too much. It only grew like an inch or two when I blocked it. And I did shorten the cardigan a little when I was knitting it because I am on the petite side. So it hits me just below the hips. So it's a great length to wear with a dress as I am doing today, but I would also be able to wear it with a tunic and leggings, or with jeans and a shirt underneath. And the sleeves, I also did have to shorten a bit because my arms are shorter, but it still comes down to my knuckles on my hand, which is a good length to keep warm, and it still lets me scrunch it up if I need to roll up the sleeves. It doesn't really stay scrunched up a lot because it's a thick fabric, but it's great if I need to do work or something. So yeah, and I mentioned the shawl collar is just, I really like the feel of this, so I'll be choosing more shawl collar patterns, or maybe designing some of my own. That would be really fun. But that's the migration cardigan. It was my Rhinebeck sweater, so I was wearing this at Rhinebeck. I've been wearing it around the house, and like I am now, it's super warm, but it's actually a little warm right now, so because I'm moving around, so I'm gonna take it back off and sit down and tell you about the rest of my knitting. Yeah, I mostly was working on the collar when I was in the car, and I had saved all the piecing before we left on the road trip. So the collar, I just had this massive piece on my lap as we were driving. It was a little too warm, but it was worth it. So the cows that I entered this into, I just want to talk about that a bit. I entered this into the Spirit of Rhinebeck cowl by Barbara of the Flame and Fiber podcast. And that was a really fun little Rhinebeck sweater cowl where whips were allowed. So that's what drew me to it. And Barbara has a really fun podcast. You should totally check her out. She also works with glass and makes great stitch markers and little glass pieces. So also check that out. I will be posting her info probably on screen and also in the show notes. And yeah, she hosted the Spirit of Rhinebeck cowl. And thanks for that fun little cowl to push me on as I finished my Rhinebeck sweater. And next project that I have to talk about is also an FO now. I'm going to have a lot of FOs in this episode, and it's going to be time to cast on some new things, which is exciting. But let me talk about this. This is a mitered nova, so this is my third time knitting my own pattern. I was also working on this on the road trip to Santa Cruz, and it's a good carnet because it's mostly garter stitch, and then when you get to the lace, which is not in garter stitch, it's a short repeat, so you can still memorize the lace. The yarn, here it is. The yarn that I used is Madeline Tosh Merino Light in 2 colors. This burnt orange brown is called Spicewood, and this multicolored gray with some flecks of orange and blue is called Yoko, which I suspect is after Yoko Ono. They have some pop culture referencing colorways, at least on the Jimmy Beans website, which I ordered this from. And I'd be curious how this represents her. But yeah, let me try to spread this out. This is the Mitered Nova. And it is my pattern. So the construction of this shawl, it goes sideways and it produces an asymmetrical shawl. You start at this end and you cast on like you would for a mitered square. Then you increase in the stripes until you get to a lace portion, which keeps increasing. Then you start decreasing with more stripes until you get back to your original stitch count, do some more lace, and then you finish in a mitered square. And if you're familiar with mitered square construction, that means that you're left with just 1 stitch at the end of the project, and you don't have to bind anything off. You just draw the last stitch through, and you weave in your ends. Oh, I left an end unwoven in. Whoops. Oh well. The needles I used on this, I used US 5 3.75 millimeters throughout the entire project. You don't have to switch needle sizes. And the needles, particular needles I used were actually Addi Turbo lace needles. I think I talked about this on my last episode. But they were pretty much perfect shawl knitting needles, especially paired with this yarn. This Madeline Tosh Merino Light is a single ply superwash merino yarn, which is great for shawls because it opens up into lace beautifully. And it shows up pretty nicely in garter stitch too. It definitely gives a different feel to the texture than applied yarn. And it just glided so smoothly on the Addis that I used. And some more technical notes about this project. I did modify the number of stripes in the decreasing portion. And the interesting thing about that is that it actually turned the shawl into a fairly symmetrical shawl. It is about the same length from the point to this tip compared to the point to this other tip, which I think will make wrapping it easier. This is a commission for a friend of a friend, so I hope it makes it a little more wearable. I think I might write up my modifications into an update for the pattern. Yep, here's my end that I didn't weave in. Whoops. I am going to be a hot mess this episode. And yeah, then I blocked it and the lace opened up a lot. The wingspan of this shawl is huge. I feel like it's the biggest mitered nova I've ever knit. But yeah, some of the cows that I'm entering this into, I'm entering it into all the cows. I'm not great at keeping up with cows. I'm entering this into the Hipster Cow by Jacqueline of Brooklyn Knit Folk, which is going on until November, so I need to hurry up and enter this. It's a great idea. You choose patterns, have less than 30 projects, and you really try to bring to light smaller name designers, or maybe just the less well-known patterns of bigger name designers. And you're really just exploring the wider world of knitting patterns and what's out there besides fades, speckle and pops, the hyped patterns. Not that there's anything wrong with them, it's just that there's so much out there that it can be hard to find those patterns unless you're actively looking for them, because on Instagram all you're going to see are things like sunset highway sweaters and what else is trending. I already mentioned Speckle and Pop, which I have Speckle and Pop, which I was stalking that hashtag on Instagram. What else is trending? I don't know. But basically, it's good to go against trends sometimes, or just see what's outside of trends, and, you know, learn to march to the beat of your own drum. The second cal that I'm entering this into is also one that I'm kind of hosting, which I've done a terrible job of. I'm sorry. But it's the Miter Nova cal, co-hosted by me and Mary Beth and Helen of the Crafty Toads podcast, also Toad Hollow NJ. They are yarn dyers and also bag makers who also live in New Jersey. And we're doing a cal of this pattern. So you should check out the pattern, enter that. We've been pretty lax on the deadline, so you still have time to pick your color combo and just go for it. Like, it's a pattern that shows off a contrasting color combo really well. So if you have a crazy skein in your fingering weight yarn in your stash that you're not sure what to do with it, pick a contrasting or coordinating solid or semi-solid and just go for it. So that's it for the Miter Nova. The next thing that I have to do is drink water. But that's really all the knitting I was able to do before I left for Taiwan. So for Taiwan, I was pretty stressed out about packing. I did not bring a terrible amount of knitting. I only brought 2 projects, one of which I will show you, and I was able to pick up an additional project once I was there. But the travel knitting thing did not really happen. I was mostly running around with my mom, so I didn't have a lot of knitting time. But let's talk about Taiwan. Taiwan talk. So my mom and I flew from Las Vegas to Taipei. We had a layover in San Francisco. For those of you curious, the San Francisco to Taipei flight was about 12 hours when you're going west to Taipei. But on the way back, it was about 10.5 hours because of tailwinds. So you fly over the international date line, so you do lose a day as you're going over to Taipei, but on the way back, you gain that day back. So on our return trip, we basically lived that day twice. Also, we flew United, and they were really cheap, probably because of all the debacles that they've had recently. So we saved money because of that misfortune. So anyway, once we get to Taipei, my uncle, her little brother, picked us up and took us to her hometown, which is Zhunan. It's about an hour south of Taipei, and we spent most of our time in Zhunan, which translates to southern bamboo, roughly. And it's a smallish town, though a small town in Taiwan is still much denser than like a suburb in America. I think in America we just like to spread out our dwellings, and in Taiwan, the buildings are really like piled onto each other, and people just live in much closer quarters. So every day we would go downstairs from my grandma's apartment and really just shop at the market for food that we needed that day, which was every day. The market ran in the mornings every day, and it was really cool to see this very different commodity culture of people buying what they needed for the day food-wise. And also if you needed some little kitchen tchotchke or a knife or something, like if you needed a kitchen knife or a placemat or just a little tool, they would have stands set up for those. If you needed a snack, if you didn't quite want to cook, they would also have a stand for that. So just buying what you needed day to day instead of buying in bulk at a supermarket was interesting. We did find a yarn shop, and the crafting culture in Taiwan is pretty different. You're not going to find indie dyers. You're going to find a lot of acrylics, a lot of kind of mail order yarn. That it's kind of what knitting, it seems like what knitting was in the States about 20, 30 years ago. So I managed to pick up this roll of cotton yarn. These are 5 balls of cotton yarn that I'm going to make into a shawl for my grandma, my ama. And it was, my mom and I kind of came up with the project idea collaboratively. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Isn't that a really nice red? This is 100% mercerized cotton, and it is actually Italian. So it recommends 3 to 3.5, or US 3 to 4 needles, or a US 2 to 3 crochet hook. But I'm still thinking of the design for this shawl. It's probably going to be something really, really simple. Probably not going to use a pattern for it. I want to do some triangle, but also pick up stitches for a shawl collar, kind of like on my migration cardigan. But that's my thoughts so far. And while we were in Junan, my grandma had her 80th birthday, so that was really fun. My grandma is the oldest of 8 kids, so she and her siblings threw a huge party for her. All of them were invited. They invited all their kids, all their grandkids, and in total it was a group of about 80 people. 50 people were able to attend the party-ish, and we rented out an entire restaurant. So all of this Taiwan stuff is going to be in a vlog that I'm posting separately, since I did take some videos. But yeah, it was really fun. Lots and lots of food. And we had a huge cake for her that I was unfortunately stuck with the job of distributing pieces of cake. I was just there, and well, when you're on the younger side of the family, you're going to get roped in, and you're going to get roped into doing chores. So I was just standing there, and then someone was like, here, hand out this piece of cake to your cousin. And then, oh, why don't you just stay here? And then, oh, here's a knife, and you're going to start cutting up the cake. And then we're just going to assembly line this to everyone in the party. And I got stuck with that job because I am of working age and able-bodied and young. So that was my grandma's birthday. You're going to see a video of the venue in the vlog post. Wow, it's picking up raining. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then my mom and I spent a few days in Taipei, the capital of the country. And we spent most of the time shopping around at all the various night markets of the city, which is mostly food, not really like clothing or goods or stuff. Some of them, they would range between mostly food or a mix of food plus non-food shopping. We did find some things on sale, and my mom and I are huge sale junkies, so kind of failed at Slow Fashion October, but we did get some books at the bookstore/combination stationery stores, which are not really a thing in the States. I feel like the closest thing we have to a stationery store in Taiwan and in Asian country, in a lot of East Asian countries, as I understand, is Target. Target has really cute stationery and also just assorted home goods that are really cute. So let me get the books that I got. When we got to the bookstores, I made a beeline for the craft section. It's really the only section that I was interested in because these stores didn't have a lot of English books. They were mostly in Chinese with some really pretty, like, maybe art books that were in English, especially once you got to the bigger stores in Taipei that were more used to accommodating foreign visitors that didn't speak as much Chinese. I am pretty illiterate in Chinese, but both of these books are in Chinese. I'm going to use them as an opportunity to practice. But the first book I got, which actually I got while I was visiting an old classmate of mine. He lives in Taipei. He's doing his year of civil service in Taiwan after graduation. And we went to a bookstore and then got lunch, and that was really fun. And it was good to catch up and see someone that I hadn't known in college, kind of outside that context. And yeah, but the first book I got was the Bible of Japanese knitting by Hitomi Shida, which has a different title in Chinese. It actually translates to like couture knitting stitches, 260 couture knitting stitches by Hitomi Shida in Chinese. And the entire book is in Chinese, but as I understand, since the English translation also came out basically the day after I got this version of the book, I thought I was so special, but I'm not. It's okay. It's okay. Now everyone has access. Everyone in the English-speaking world has access to this book. It is basically the same as the English version, and it's mostly charts and photos anyways, so I don't have to read a lot of Chinese to understand it. I am still using it to pick up basic phrases, but look at the typography of this cover. They turn parts of the characters into little stitches or little loops of thread. It's so cute. And it's a beautiful, beautiful book. I am getting so many design ideas from this, and I have a sock collection already milling about in my head based on Taiwanese sweets and drawing from stitches in this book. So keep an eye out for that in probably 2018, because I am horribly slow at getting patterns out. The second book that I got is an amigurumi book, and it is relevant to the next project I'm going to talk about. And it goes through a lot of amigurumi techniques. They are mostly like very simple spherical and cylindrical shapes, like this tree here. What I find really interesting is this charting and schematic method that they use. If you see, all the shapes that you need to make each amigurumi are charted, starting from the center, and you read in a spiral to create the shape that you need. So it shows you kind of how each shape is segmented into fifths or sixths, and it shows you where you need to increase to get the number of stitches at each round that you need. And I think 2018 will be a year of amigurumi for me. This is further reinforced by my next knitting project. So this is the knitting and stuff that I got up to while I was in Taiwan. So the first thing I have to show you is an FO, and it is a Minnie Mouse amigurumi. Like I said, I think I'm getting into amigurumi. So I finished this before I got the amigurumi book. The amigurumi book was inspired or was motivated by this project. So my mom and I were watching TV and just hanging out at my grandma's, and we saw that there was this promotion for an amigurumi kit for 149 NT, Taiwan dollars, which converts to about $5 USD. And it was a Disney Tsum Tsum, if you guys know this. Tsum Tsum are these like little chibi characters of the Disney characters, and the kits were being sold in bookstores all around the country, and also 7-Elevens and other convenience store chains, which is pretty awesome. Like, imagine walking into your neighborhood 7-Eleven and finding crafts. So that was really cool, and my mom and I were like, well, there's a 7-Eleven downstairs, let's go and get it. We actually had some trouble finding one. So there's the other chain that's big in Taiwan of convenience stores. The other big convenience store chain in Taiwan is Family Mart. And we first went to our Family Mart where we were getting coffee every day. And they were sold out of the mini kit. And then they actually had a Pooh Bear kit that was not part of the promotion. And that was 349 NT, which is about $10-11 USD. Not as good of a deal, so we didn't get that one. We're deal hunters. And then we went to our 7-Eleven and found Minnie Mouse. And the kit came with the yarn, the instructions, which I can't find right now, and all the finishing details, the materials for finishing details, such as this fabric. Didn't come with glue. It came with some felt for the eyes, embroidery thread for her eyelashes, and extra thread for sewing on details. There was a lot of extra yarn. Oh, also stuffing for her. She's stuffed. So yeah, the kit came with everything. It was cheap. It was super cute. So I had to have it. And I was working on this kind of like during the second week that I was in Taiwan. It took me just a few days because we would have some days where we had planned events, but then in between planned events we didn't really have a lot to do, me and my mom. So I was just crocheting. Oh, it came with a hook. So I was just crocheting on Minnie Mouse as we were watching TV or just kind of lounging around. And this was my first time doing an amigurumi. So you cast on at her nose area and then you spiral out to create her face. There was an interesting crochet, two-color crochet technique, kind of like, I guess it was pretty much stranding, that you did to create her hairline, and then you kept, without increasing, you would knit her body in a tube, and then decrease for her behind, her little hiney. And before you closed up the shape, you would actually chain around the hairline to create a neater line, which I don't think I did the best job of. That was a new to me technique, but I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. Once you had the hairline, that was the last detail you needed before stuffing it. The stuffing was interesting because I had to go out and get a little sewing kit. They had a little bag of plastic beads that was supposed to be incorporated into the stuffing. There was also cotton stuffing, but you took the beads and you had a little piece of cloth that you would hand sew a pouch for. And these beads, because they're heavier than cotton stuffing, would provide a bit of weight to this amigurumi. And so it lies in her belly. And it also makes her sit a little better when you place her on the flat surface. And yeah, once I put in the pouch, put in the stuffing, then I closed up her butt. And then it was time to crochet the little bits, like her ears, feet. Look, her hands and feet are different colors because she wears gloves. Her tail. And so all of this was charted, like I showed you in the amigurumi book. So that was just interesting to use that style of pattern. And you were given the schematics of all the parts, tutorials of some parts, but I was mostly left to infer a lot of the steps since I wasn't quite reading the instructions. I was just seeing, oh, I need to make this shape and this shape. I was really figuring out most of the process for myself. Once you had the crochet parts, then I did the finishing touches, like her bow, which I had to cut out 2 pieces of fabric, double it, and glue them together, and then glue the little band that ties the bow together. I did have to go out and buy super glue separately to stick it onto the yarn, and then some little felt ovals for the eyes. I embroidered the eyelashes on, and then cut out the skirt and glued the skirt on. So yeah, she turned out super cute, super cute, and she's squishy and tiny. And I could make her into a keychain, but I don't want to really have her thrown around and just roughed up like a keychain gets. So I think I'm just going to keep her on my desk. But that's it for the Minnie Mouse amigurumi. She's super cute. I think they should totally sell kits like that in the States. If you understand Japanese or Chinese, you should send an email to the company and tell them, hey, these would sell really well in the States, right? So yeah, that's it for that. The next project that I was working on in Taiwan was a little more of a travel project. I brought it with me to Taipei. I was kind of working on it at my grandma's, but mostly in Taipei because it was a nice relaxing project that I didn't have to keep looking at the instructions for. And it's been on my needles for a while, and it's finally done. You guessed it. It's the piano scarf. Ah! It's done. So this is one side of it. This is a double knit. This is a double knit fingering weight scarf with the pattern is a fractal pattern that is called a, well, the specific fractal pattern is the piano curve, which is part of a class of fractals called space-filling curves. These are self-repeating patterns that fill up a two-dimensional flat space. And this is designed by, this is the pattern is Piano Number 2 by the sockmatician Nathan Taylor. It is mathematically inspired, so it is totally up my alley. When I brought it with me to Taiwan, I was mostly done with it already. I was about an inch past where this progress keeper is, so about here. And then in Taiwan, I knit the rest of it and then bound off. This project has multiple stories behind it. I started it when I was in college, and I brought it with me to my graduation trip to Yosemite, and then after Yosemite, when I graduated and I was going to start the teaching program, I brought that with me throughout my move. I was working on it a lot that summer. I kind of dropped the project for a while because I was really stressed out. And then after I left my teaching program, I really had not picked it up. And so it was a few episodes ago that I vowed to pick it back up and finish it before Rhinebeck, because I knew that Nathan was going to be there at Rhinebeck. So I wanted to finish it and show it to him. So I brought it with me to Taiwan. So I got like about the last 4 inches done while I was in Taiwan, and then one afternoon at my grandma's I was binding off, and the bind off was interesting. So basically what happens, it's like so double knitting, you're producing a double-sided fabric that with stockinette on both sides. So a really neat finish to it is basically Kitchenering it together, grafting the two sides of the fabric together to produce a really seamless edge where the stitches really just continue on into infinity. It's a really nice finish. So if you want to find out more about the progress of this pattern, I would go through my back episodes. You might have to go back quite a while. I think I was working on it in my first episode and I had just started it. But the yarn that I used is Cascade Heritage Wave or the color changing yarn, which shifts between red to orange to yellow, is Cascade Heritage Wave in the solar colorway. If you're interested in a similar yarn, I think Knit Picks makes Chroma Twist now, which also similarly changes color. And it's applied yarn where each ply kind of is a gradient by itself. So you get this nice marled effect when you're knitting with it. And then the solid gray is charcoal. It is a solid gray. It's part also Cascade Heritage in their solids line. And the two provide a really nice contrast. You have the piano curve coming out of a gray background, and this one you have the piano curve on a like fiery orange-red background in gray. So it really reminds me of like flaming runes from a fantasy novel or fantasy universe. And you have this kind of mystic looking design. Maybe you're in a magma chamber or something left by the old dwarven societies. Anyway, rant over. The needles I used on this was US 3 2.75 millimeters, and I actually used Chaogu bamboo needles. That's really been my only project that I've knit on those needles. And I think bamboo was a good choice for double knitting because I needed a grippier, I just needed more control through this project. So the bamboo provided a grippier surface for my stitches, and it still provided a nice it still provided some good slip for my stitches so I wasn't fighting to get them off the needle, but they also wouldn't go missing if I put my project down, which I tended not to do in the middle of a row. I would put it down only at the end of... I'd never really put this project down in the middle of the row because that was just scary. But I would just feel more secure while I was knitting it, that my stitches wouldn't fall off the needle. And so, I talked about the bind off. Let's see what else is in my notes. So one last story to finish off my discussion of this project and to really put this to rest and have it as a finished object. It is a shorter scarf than the pattern calls for. Nathan's sample is about 8 feet long. He is much taller than I am. He's 6 foot something. I'm 5 foot something. And this is about my height. And I chose a shorter scarf for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't have as much yarn as he did. I didn't buy a second skein of each color, so I just knit until I felt like I didn't have enough yarn for another repeat. And also, I think I didn't want a super long scarf. This nice compact short scarf is just fine for me. Though I think if this was a cowl, that would be really nice. But it wouldn't do the pattern justice as much. You can't... This is... The way this is written for a rectangular scarf, it is all one long squiggly line, which is super cool. So, I did bring this to Rhinebeck because I did finish it while in Taiwan, and I was able to meet Nathan with this project and show it to him, and he was super excited to see it, which I was glad for. I think he puts out really high quality patterns, though some of them are more advanced or more complex. So this is one of the few Peano #2 scarves in existence in the world, and I'm so glad that we were able to meet and share our geekery for the Peano curve and incorporating math into knitting. So he complimented me on my gauge, which was, yes, a huge compliment. And yeah, he was so funny to meet in person. He just had so much energy. When we were taking pictures, he scrunched himself all the way down so to bring himself to my height. It was just super fun to meet him. The way it happened was also funny because I went to Rhinebeck on Sunday. I didn't know if he'd be there on Sunday. I knew he'd be there on Saturday because everyone's there. And so my friend Ramona, I'll talk about her later too, she first messaged me on Instagram. I didn't see it. And then she runs up to me. Chanel, do you have the scarf? Like, I'm there with Nathan and he wants to see it. And so we run across the fairgrounds at Rhinebeck, and I grab it out of my backpack, run across the fairgrounds to see Nathan. And then I was like, Nathan! Well, first I was just standing there, just flabbergasted, staring at him while he was talking to someone else. This was my face. I was like... And then he turns around and sees me pulling that face. But that was me meeting Nathan. And it was one of those moments, which I had many of at Rhinebeck. And so that's my last story, not that well told, for this scarf. And it will join my wardrobe of FOs now. And it is time to take off this progress keeper. So... goodbyes. Say bye-bye to the scarf. It'll just make an appearance if I'm wearing it in episodes now. I'm going to take a short break here, but after this, I have some spinning and then Rhinebeck talk. So let's actually talk Rhinebeck first, since it's on my mind now, and I just want to talk about it first, so my podcast, my rules. So I talked about everything related to Taiwan, hopefully. If not, wow, I feel so scatterbrained right now. I'm sorry. Or, no, not sorry. My podcast, my rules. And my thing. I am in control. Okay. So I really did not get any downtime between Taiwan and Rhinebeck, so that's why I just want to roll straight into it. I got back from Taiwan to the States on a Thursday morning. My mom and I flew from Taipei to San Francisco, and then from San Francisco to Vegas, and we got back around noon Vegas time, and we basically just slept once we got back. That was a Thursday. Friday, I got a day to unpack and repack at my parents', and then Saturday, I spent all day flying from Vegas to Newark, and then at Newark, I was picked up by my boyfriend. He drove me back to my apartment. We got like a few minutes of hangout time and chat. And then I'm like, I've got to go to Rhinebeck. And he takes me back to the train. He takes me back in the direction of the airport to the train station, drops me off. And I'm like, I'm sorry we didn't get to hang out. And then I take the train from Newark to a series of train switching to the World Trade Center, then to Grand Central Station in New York, and then I take the train from Grand Central up to Poughkeepsie, where I would get to stay with Elise of my two tips, and it was so great to meet her in person, and I stayed with her and her mom. I got there at like 2 a.m. I get to the train station in Poughkeepsie at 2 a.m. It was the last train out of Grand Central. There was just absolutely no downtime. I was absolutely sleep deprived, but we ended up staying up until 4 a.m. because she had her adventures from Indie Untangled and Rhinebeck Saturday, and I wanted to hear all about it. So we stayed up talking for a while, and we got like 3 hours of sleep that night. And then Sunday morning, we woke up bright and early, caffeinated a lot until we didn't feel the sleep deprivation, and then we were off to Rhinebeck. So I spent most of the day wandering around with her. We focused on the barns that she and her mom didn't get to on Saturday, and it was just so much calmer. We got there as soon as the gates were open. And from what everyone said about Rhinebeck Saturday, I'm kind of glad I missed it. I would not have been able to handle that crowd. I was thinking of switching my flight from Saturday to Friday, giving me no downtime in Vegas, but I would be able to make Rhinebeck Saturday. I was thinking of switching that. I'm glad I didn't, because I would have been totally jet lagged, totally overwhelmed by the crowd, and just not having any fun. So who wants that? So the first thing that I got when you're wandering around one of the buildings, the one with 2 stories, and I was really focusing this year on spinning. So I mentioned earlier, 2018 will be the year of amigurumi. It's also going to be the year of spinning. So amigurumi and spinning. Great combination. The first thing that I got were these 2 bats of Lincoln wool, and they're dyed with plant dyes, I think. And from talking to so these bats are from Barn Swallow Farm, who specializes in Lincoln long wool sheep. They are long wools. And Maureen is the owner and primary spinner. They are from New York. And they have an Etsy, Barn Swallow Farm. I'll put all this in the show notes. From talking to Maureen, this long wool is really, she mostly spins it woolen, so with lots of air in it. And it works up into a great yarn for outerwear. So I didn't buy enough for, say, an entire sweater, but I did definitely buy enough for something either mitteny or leg warmery, and in these contrasting colors I would definitely do it in color work. So woolen spun 2-ply for stranded color work, yes, that is my plan for these Lincoln bats. The next thing that I got was some BFL spinning fiber from Fiber Kingdom, which is in Salem, New York. And it is it's a chocolatey brown BFL. So I mostly got this because I wanted to get something from her booth, but I could not get her wheel. I would have been a bad choice to buy her spinning wheel because I was trying I tried the wheel that she had on display, which was the shocked ladybug, and she offered to sell it to me. I was really, really tempted, but I did not want to carry that around the entire fairground. So this year at Rhinebeck, I said I was focusing on spinning, and specifically, I was focusing on shopping around for a spinning wheel. I will be getting a spinning wheel as a result of trying it at this booth. I have decided on getting a shocked ladybug. It's just, I was trying as many wheels as I could in person, and Sunday was even greater for it because it was less busy, so I wouldn't feel bad taking away the shop owner's attention from another customer if it was a little slower, and I would just try the wheels. And I did not try a Golding wheel, but I was trying wheels in my price range. I tried a Ladybug, I tried a Louette S10. I did not get to try a Kromsky, and then I tried the Merlin Tree wheels. I fell in love with the Ladybug. It was one of the first wheels that I tried that day, and it just treadled so easily. It was the perfect height for me. It's a fairly small wheel. It's a very compact travel wheel too. I'll be getting a travel bag for it. And it is definitely going to be my wheel. I just didn't want to buy it at Rhinebeck because that would have been a transportation nightmare. And I was able to find a good deal, so maybe even next episode I'll have my wheel. I don't know. But yeah, I'm planning on using this as practice fiber, especially on my new wheel. So this nice brown BFL. I'm going to try to spin it as fine as I can because I want to see how fine I can get with a wheel. And yeah, the next thing that happened after Rhinebeck, so both of those were in the same building. As soon as we came out, there was the little alpaca parade that happens at 11. And across the pathway, I see someone wearing the migration sweater. It was this bright, lovely mustard yellow. And I was telling Elise, Elise, should I go up to that person and tap them on the shoulder and just say like, hey, sweater twins? And she's my cheerleader, so she egged me on, and I actually did go up to the person and say, hey, we're sweater twins. And it turns out that was Stacy Gerben. She was the designer of the sweater. And hi, Stacy, if you're watching this. She did comment on one of my previous episodes that she hoped to see me at Rhinebeck. So it happened. It happened. We actually met up at Rhinebeck and we took a picture, and it was just so cool because she was wearing her original sample, which I think is the one in the photos of the pattern. So yeah, that was cool. I'm still kind of starstruck, and I was starstruck for a full hour afterwards. I was like, Elise, I just met the designer of my Rhinebeck sweater. Since we missed the podcaster meetup, I missed the podcaster meetup, Elise was there. I wanted to meet up, I had kind of a list of people I wanted to meet up with. I had the piano scarf to meet up with Nathan. I knew that some people would be staying for Rhinebeck Sunday, so we managed to get a little get-together on the hill. I saw Adrian and Freakish Lemon, and then his sister, Gabby of Once Upon a Corgi, and who else did I see? Shamika. And I saw Shamika of Mika Mika Shop / Knit Night with Mika Mika. Saw Eric of Sticks Plus Twine. And then I saw my friend Ramona. And she gave me something super, super generous. She gave me a pair of hand carders. Ah! I'm so excited to use these. Thank you so much, Ramona. I love you so much. This is not squishy at all, but it actually feels really nice on my face because my face is kind of hot right now. I don't know why. I think my adrenaline's rushing because I am so scatterbrained in this episode right now that it's more like I'm in fight or flight mode. And I always choose fight, even though I'm so small. But yeah, now that I have a pair of hand carders, I can make my own Rolags. And I was just about to smash these in my face, which would not have been good. But yeah, that was one acquisition. And then my last acquisition at Rhinebeck this was after I had lunch. I had met up with some people and I just needed a moment to sit in it. But the last thing that I got at Rhinebeck, oh wait, one little thing I forgot to mention. While we were shopping around in the fiber barn, we had there was a spindle booth and they were giving out free samples of fiber, which is so cute. It was like a bag of candy for spinners. The last thing that I got at Rhinebeck was a splurge. And it will be one of the first projects on my wheel. I'm saving it for my wheel. It's pretty cool getting to plan out my spinning projects now. I'm like, should I save this for the wheel? Or should I spin it on the spindle? This is definitely a wheel project because it is a loop bump. Ah! And these are, of course, my colors. Neutrals, darks. This is from Loop. And the colorway is called Salt of the Earth. It is a 5.4 ounce bat. Nice, big, and fat. It's one of their center pull bumps. So you're going to just pull. I'm just going to pull from the center. It's just going to draft itself and spin like butter. I'm going to probably put on a few movies while I'm spinning it. It's going to be so nice. It's going to be a treat myself kind of night when I spin it up. It has merino, angelina, and nylon in it. So this might spin up into nice sock yarn. I don't know. I have no plans for it so far. But yeah, if you noticed, all of my acquisitions at Rhinebeck were spinning focused. I got no yarn because really 2018 is going to be the year of amigurumi and spinning. So that's all I want to talk about for Rhinebeck. I could go on forever and ever and ever about it, but let's transition into spinning. So I talked about spinning, acquisitions, and I have one more acquisition, but I want to talk about my current spinning whip, which is an update on the Sister Strands project. This is a project that my friend Mars of Hey Brownberry started a year ago now. I got the fiber from Rhinebeck of 2016. I had planned to finish it by Rhinebeck 2017, but I was only able to show part of it to the vendor I got the fiber from. It's mostly done. It's on my end because the spinning is slower than dyeing. I'm still working on it, but I am applying the BFL braid that Mars dyed and sent back to me. So for those of you not in the know, the Sister Strands is a project where we bought bare fiber, we split it in half, and Mars's half she dyed first, then sent back to me to spin as the braids. And then my half, I spun first and then sent the spun yarn for her to dye. And we wanted to compare how these were two different kinds of wool, and we wanted to compare how it was dyeing different breeds of wool, and also different preparations of wool, well, spun versus unspun fiber. And this was one of her first experiences dyeing unspun spinning fiber, so I hope that was enjoyable for her. It was definitely enjoyable spinning the fiber for her. This is 100% BFL spun from Cone's Top, so a worsted prep. And I fractal spun it. So this is one half of the braids spun. These are the long color repeats. And this is the other half, the short color repeats. And I'm ready to ply it. It's just I haven't gotten around to it. I do have a large spindle on the way that will be able to fit all 4 ounces of the braid onto it. So I'll have one giant skein that I won't have to join. And then just as a comparison, so the BFL braid turned out variegated enough that I had to do some color management on it. The Finn sheep braid, which is the other sheep breed that we studied in this project, turned out pretty much semi-solid, so I didn't have to do any color management on it. When I spun it up, it's this nice semi-solid reddish brown with some pops of more red spots. The yellow that dye that she used didn't really show up on this, whereas in the BFL, you definitely see some bits of yellow. And that's an update on the sister strands. Next time you hear about the project, it's going to be done, and hopefully I'll be able to show you all 4 skeins, which is exciting. The next spinning project I have is not started yet, but for now it is an acquisition. I have this huge fluffy braid of fiber from Blue Moon Fiber Arts. This is in their colorway Fire on the Mountain, and the base that it's in is 8515 superwash merino and nylon. That's their label. It is so huge and fluffy. It is an 8-ounce braid. I've only ever bought fiber in 4-ounce quantities, so this is my first time buying an 8-ounce braid, and this is actually going to be my first spinning commission. A friend of mine wanted some hand-spun yarn for me, so she offered to pay for the finished yarn. I'm still working out a pricing scheme for it, but she did reimburse me for the braid so far, and I'm working out kind of the labor rate that I want to charge her. I'm either going to do it per yard or per hour, and I think per yard is just going to be easier to calculate, and it will give me both of those correspond to spinning time, so I think I will go with a per yardage rate of the final yarn, plus maybe like multiply it by the number of plies, because that also impacts spinning time. But anyway, for this braid, I know exactly what I'm going to go for. I'm aiming for 2 4-ounce skeins of, or maybe 1 giant skein, depending on my equipment at that point, of worsted weight yarn, DK to worsted weight yarn. I'm not sure how I'm going to manage the colors in this braid. They're so bright, and I want to keep that brightness. I think I'm going to go with chain plying this yarn to keep the color repeats. Or maybe just fractal spinning, because I'm on such a fractal spinning kick. So that's Blue Moon Fiber Arts. Isn't that gorgeous? I want to order more fiber from them now. It's so pretty. So that's it for spinning. Let me clean up a little. The rest of this, I mean, starting from the post-Rhinebeck talk, these past couple of sections have been just kind of leftover sections of after I got back from the madness and trying to settle back into a normal life here. So this section is going to be leftovers. I came back from my trip to find that I now have a local yarn store called Yarnia, and I've mentioned it a few times, but now Yarnia is officially open. In fact, it's been open for a month now, and while they were leading up to their opening, they had a Kickstarter to raise some extra funds, and I got the swag that I got from the Kickstarter. So one thing I got was a set of stitch markers made by the owner's daughter, and she's also going to be a crochet instructor at the store. These are really cute. They're also the flexible loop type, so they could fit any needle size. And then I got a kit for the shawl that I designed for the Kickstarter, which will be doing a cowl just with the store. It's called Montclair Flare. I'm going to be using this to make my sample for the cowl. So that's going to be showing up in future episodes. But yeah, this yarn is from Ancient Arts and is their Socknado yarn base. It's 80-20 merino nylon. It is 385 yards to 100 grams, so it's on the heavier side of fingering weight. In fact, it almost matches some sport weight yarns. Like when I was knitting the prototype of the Montclair Flare, I had matched it up with a skein of Madeline Tosh Pashmina, which was 360 yards to 100 grams and classified as a sport weight. So it is on the heavier side of fingering weight. I bet it would make a really nice sock. Hey, I could make socks out of the leftovers. But yeah, this is going to go into the sample for the cowl, so you'll see that soon. And I'll talk more about Yarnia later. And what the other thing I've been working on is the baby set that I'm doing on commission. And I finished the blanket a while back, and I've been working on the sweater, so let me show you the blanket first, since I'll be incorporating motifs from the blanket into the sweater. This pattern is Bounce by Tin Can Knits, and it's a multicolored baby blanket where you choose one main color for contrasting stripes between your motifs, and then five contrasting colors. And so far, this sweater, I chose this middle blue here. I chose this middle blue that's denim in the yarn Drops Muscat. And this is what I have of the sweater so far. The pattern, the base pattern that I'm using is Baby Sophisticate by, oh, I forgot to write down the author's name, but it's all going to be in the show notes. The needles I'm using are US 5 or 3.75 millimeter Addy Turbos. And honestly, it's a little too slippery for this yarn because this is mercerized cotton. And so the cotton is just going crazy. But it's fine. That means that it goes faster. It just kind of feels like I'm about to slide off the rails at any point while I'm knitting it, which isn't a super fun feeling, but it's okay. It's because it's such a quick project, I'm sure it won't stress me out in the long term. But my plan for this, since this is a top-down shawl collar cardigan, the main body, the tops of the sleeves, and the top of the body and the shawl collar are going to be in this medium blue. And then around the hem and maybe the sleeves, if that doesn't look too busy, I'm going to include stripes of these three colors, since these are the brightest colors. And they are going to be spaced out by the white garter ridges. So incorporating the blanket motif into the sweater, which ties it all into a set. The sweater, I'm also knitting it in a slightly different weight than the pattern calls for. The pattern calls for Aran weight. I believe Drops Muscat is, let me see. Drops Muscat is 100% mercerized cotton in about 109 yards to 50 grams. That's a worsted weight, I believe. So it's a little lighter than the pattern calls for. So it's a free pattern on Ravelry, so I can say all the details I want. I am knitting a few extra increase rows so I get to the right measurement around the chest. I'm not too worried about fit because it's a baby cardigan. But yeah, that's progress on this. I hope to have this done by next episode because I need to have it finished by the end of November for the recipient. That's the Bounce baby set. The next project I've been working on, and the last project that I'll talk about for this episode, is a pair of socks for my mom. This is the project so far. I started these just a few days ago, and I'm already past the heel. I'm doing them toe up, 2 at a time, which is turning out to be my default sock method on 2 at a time magic loop. And the pattern I'm using, I could call it a design. I don't know if I'm going to publish it. If people are interested in this, I've been calling it in my head the if-then pattern, because if there's a color change, then you do something a little special to switch up the colors, but it's still mostly vanilla. So I started at the toes with Judy's Magic Cast On, and then increased with my rounded toe increase. And then when I switched colors for the heel, I did the color change motif, and the color change, yeah, motif is, sure, the little color change doohickey. And at each color change in the striping, that's when I'm doing the doohickey. And I did a German short row heel on the socks. I normally do short row heels. I decided not to do a heel flap and gusset because I didn't want the width of the stripes to change as I knit up the socks. But I also switched it up for my normal Fish Lips Kiss heel because I just wanted to switch it up. So I looked up how to do German short rows since I don't have that memorized and did it. I did mess up a little in the short rows here, and I hope I did cover it up well enough so that there aren't any holes. but this is just going to be, this is a really fun project so far. The yarn is Knitpick Stroll for the contrasting toes, heels, and cuffs. Well, will be cuffs. In Sprinkle Heather, which is their kind of their standard sock yarn. It's 80-20 or 75-25. Let me check myself. So Stroll is 75-25 superwash merino and nylon, and 231 yards per 50 grams. And the heathered color that I chose has tones of the stripes that I chose for the socks. If you see, it has some teals, it has pinks and purples sprinkled throughout the lavender. So it matches the stripes really well. The striping yarn is Knitpick's Felici in Cheshire Grin. That's the colorway, and yes, you do see the Cheshire Cat. The Felici, in contrast to... Felici is also 75-25 merino nylon, but it is slightly heavier. It's 218 yards to 50 grams, but I really don't feel the difference I don't feel a difference in gauge when switching between these yarns. So I'm just really happy with this color combo, and I hope my mom likes them too. She really likes purple. So on the front, I'm doing a little thing at the color changes. On the back, I'm doing a slightly different thing, which is turning out into little eyelets along the back of the leg. I hope it's pretty. If you like this, and you want to egg me on to write this up, say so in the comments, please. I don't know if this warrants an entire pattern, but I'm having a lot of fun, and you know what? Maybe if I like this pattern enough, I'll put it out, because I will also want you to have fun knitting socks with self-striping yarn. The needles I'm using are US 1 or 2.25 millimeters on a 40-inch Chaogu circular. And 40 inches is my default length for 2 at a time socks, because I like a longer cable. I can't do like a 32-inch. For 2 at a time, the loop would just be not big enough for me. And 48 inches, which is usually the next size up for circular needles or length, is too long for me. There's just too much cable going on, so 40 inches is just right for me. And that's it. That's all I want to say about my mom's socks, the If Then socks. And the last thing that I have to talk about is an acquisition that I got after I got back from Rhinebeck. So I saw it before Rhinebeck, and I wanted to make sure I would have the budget left after Rhinebeck, so I saw that Rachel of Treehouse Knits, hi Rachel, if you're watching, was destashing some yarn on her Instagram. So I told her, hey, you don't have to hold this for me if someone else comes along. Totally fine, let them have it. But after Rhinebeck, if I have the budget, I want this yarn. So I got this big bag of yarn from her. It is also Blue Moon Fiber Arts. It is their bamboo and merino blend. It's 60% merino, 40% bamboo. And let me hold up this little ball of it. It is leftovers from one of her projects, and they come in mega hanks. These are 8-ounce hanks. I think Blue Moon Fiber Arts is just really into their big hanks. It's this nice reddish purple color. Blue Moon Fiber Arts calls it bittersweet. And I think it kind of reminds me of beets. But it is definitely a sweater's quantity. And I'm thinking of doing a colorwork sweater with it. So I'm going to shop for matching contrasting yarn at Yarnia. And then I will keep you updated on that project. But that's all I have for the leftovers. That's what's going on in my life right now in terms of crafting. A lot has happened. A lot is still happening as usual in my hectic life. Because the life of a 20-something who doesn't know what they're doing in their life. A lot is going on. I'm still applying to grad school. And I do have a mentor that's going to help me with applications, which is really nice. And I'm glad I have them in my life. And so, yeah, everything's going well there. And that brings me to wrap up. Since I didn't do announcements, at the beginning of this episode, this is kind of also an announcement section. One exciting thing is starting tomorrow, actually, since today's Sunday the 29th, I'm going to be working at Yarnia as an instructor and part-time associate. So if you are in the New Jersey or New York area, please come visit me. It is accessible from the city by train. You just take the Andrew Transit train on the Montclair Boonton line up to either Bay Street or Walnut Street. You can walk from Walnut Street to the store, or if you want, or if it's raining or snowing or something, you can take a Lyft or an Uber, and it'll be probably just a couple of bucks. So come visit me at Yarnia, and I will be teaching classes there, so look out for classes if you're interested in any techniques. So I will also be, I'm still going to be freelance teaching around the area, and actually next weekend on the 5th, I will be teaching 2 workshops at Knit Tapestry, which is a local yarn store in Waldwick, New Jersey, up north in Bergen County. So there I'll be teaching my 2 at a time toe-up sock class, 2 at a time toe-up socks, and a build your own shawl class, which is a new to me workshop that I'm still tweaking, but I developed with the help of Montclair Knitting Circle, my knitting group, and I test drive a lot of my workshops through them. Basically, it's going to be a workshop where you learn about the construction of traditional center-out shawls, such as triangle and crescent-shaped shawls, and with using some basic lace knitting, you choose your own motifs and build a shawl design from there. So I'm really excited to be teaching there. So if you are interested, I think the sock class is filled up. The sock class is full, but there are still spots in the shawl class, so get in touch with Nancy at Knit Tapestry. She is Knit Tapestry on Instagram, and if you go on knittapestry.com, you can find email information and everything to sign up. But yeah, and I'll keep you up to date about any additional workshops. And then the last announcement I want to do is that I will be having a fiber study project. Once I get my wheel, I will be doing a bit of crowdfunding to fund materials and additional equipment for it. So keep an eye out for that. And I'm really excited for it. Basically, I will be using a wheel. I'll be taking my spinning wheel and studying natural fibers and their production and getting in touch with makers and producers to really explore sustainability in our fiber crafting community. So if that interests you, keep an eye out for the crowdfunding campaign I'm going to have so you can get your hands on some of the hand-spun yarn that's going to come out of it. And yeah, so thanks so much for watching. I know this episode was super scattered because there was a lot going on. I had some trouble organizing the content when I was making my show notes. And I hope it doesn't show too much in the final product, or if it does, at least hopefully it was exciting and interesting instead of just blah. So yeah. Also reminder to enter the Patreon giveaway, which is a giveaway of mini spinning nests from What the Flock Fiber Arts. And all of that information is in the Ravelry group. So yeah, head over to the Ravelry group if you like this podcast, participate in some discussion, ask me questions, look over the show notes, ask me anything that comes up. And yeah, check me out on Instagram, Facebook, and get in touch with me however you want. If you want to just hit me up and chat. And subscribe, like this video, and thanks so much again for watching. If this was your first time watching, I am honestly this is probably not the best episode to start off on. But maybe you get a sense of like how chaotic my brain is and my life is. So maybe it was a good starting point. It gives you a sense of what you're in for. So thanks so much for checking me out and giving me a chance. If you're a returning viewer, thanks so much for your continuing support. I really appreciate you and having you along with me in my life journey. And yeah, that's all I have for you. I will see you next time whenever I get to record again. I'm still settling back into a normal schedule and getting my work schedules in order, so who knows? I'll try to record in about 2 weeks. So I will see you then. Bye! Come on, focus.